Hello everyone, Leah here. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can paint fun and playful abstract roses with acrylics. In this video, I'm going to go over the steps that I take to just really let loose and create that floral shape, as well as some little tips and tricks along the way for painting floral paintings. First up, I just want to point out that right now, I'm just sort of lightly mapping out where I'm thinking I'm going to put my flowers and the layout of my painting. I like to do this with my colored pencils, and sometimes I'll do it with ink. But I'm just basically trying to think, okay, so these are going to be the colors that I'm using. Where am I going to put these colors? And when I do it like this, sometimes you can see those color pencils in the background after all the painting's done, and I really like that added extra layer. Now let's just jump right into putting down that first layer of shape that I'm thinking of making my roses in. This stage, you can do it in your acrylic paints or any acrylic inks or anything like that you have. I like to do it with my watercolor crayons. It just adds that extra little layer of, if I make a boo-boo, I can just wipe it off with water type thing. And you'll see me do that here. I was like, oh no, I don't like the way the shape is fixing. So I'm wiping it down with water and then just going in and loosely placing it and starting to go, okay, now this is the shape that I want. Roses can be a tricky floral to paint because there are a lot of different versions of roses, and a lot of artists have their own little way of creating their shapes for them. We're not going to go with a traditional rose for today's painting. No, our roses are going to be more of the variety of the ones that you'll find in your gardens and on your walks when you're out and about in nature. Which is why you can see right now my first layer of mapping out my 2 star roses is me just kind of fluffing out where the flowers are going to go, like the petals, and some that are hanging open. I'm also going to put one in the background. A little tip when it comes to doing florals like this is that when you're going to put one in the background, you don't want to put as much detailing into it, and you might even want to make it a little bit smaller than your star flowers in the front. Now that I've flushed out the general shape of my star roses of this painting, I'm going to go in and start readjusting where I think I'm going to put my next type of rose. And these ones are going to be smaller just because of the different formation of them. And you might be thinking right now, Leah, we're like 3 minutes into this video and you haven't even gotten your acrylics out yet. What the fork? I thought we were going to learn how to paint with acrylic paints. And we are. It's just, I find that when it comes to painting flowers that you may be having a difficulty painting, because roses are one of those harder flowers to do. When you take away the pressure of painting with your actual acrylic paints or your watercolors and start by just mapping out your basic shapes first, it helps a lot. Now, because of acrylics being something that you can easily paint over things, it's really fun to just do your base idea layer on the canvas, on the piece of paper that you're going to be painting with. Now, if you're going to be using watercolors, I would recommend doing this on a separate piece of paper just because of how translucent and see-through everything is. You'll also find throughout this video that I go back and forth between painting my florals and then my greenery. I find it gives you that added little insight into whether or not your colors are turning out properly, if they're working with one another, as well as gives your flowers and your greenery the opportunity to have some drying time in between those two areas. Today's painting is also going to be primarily done with flat brushes. I prefer using flat and filbert size paintbrushes, but use whatever type you like or what you have on hand. I'm also, as you can see, starting on my smaller roses versus the focal point roses, because when I'm going in and doing my layering, I'm going to want those focal point roses to really pop, so I want my smaller ones to stand in the background. For the smaller ones, I actually have this reference photo that you guys can take a quick look at that is my inspiration for it. I couldn't actually find the exact same rose that I'm trying to impersonate because I don't want to replicate it exactly, but I want to have that same free flowing, just the way I look at it and what stands out to me. That's what you want to do with your roses, is what stands out and how do you make it more abstract is what you do when you just pick out the shape that it is. And instead of being precise about where the highlights are and where the shadows are, use your brush and move it around in your hands. So I call it the squiggle, but basically you're just like rotating your wrist a little, so then that way you're moving the paintbrush so you're getting different angles and sides of it. And in between your layers, you want to just build upon it. So you want to get a little bit lighter as you go. You can even backtrack if you'd like and add some extra darker layers in there, but because I want these to be less focal point flowers, I'm going to keep building on it, just making them a little lighter and lighter. Now that I've moved on to the more focal point roses, I'm laying down a solid red that I want to have be my base color for all my mixing. And these are the flowers that you can see on the overlay that are my inspiration. I think they're called English garden roses. I can't remember their exact name, but they are the type of rose that actually grows more like as a bush, and they have the centers that are very noticeable. So I'm going to just focus on the things that about those roses that I want to have become the focal point. What about them do I think really stands out? And one of them is that there are multiple layers and different ways that the lights hit them, and the fact that the center sticks out. You'll notice that even though the reference image, the type of rose that I am being inspired by, has multiple petals, I'm choosing to focus on using a medium-sized brush to create large shapes. And because I just want to be impressionistic with it, more abstract in the shapes that I'm making for these flowers. If you want to be more precise, then you can use actually a smaller brush and get in a little bit more detailing. But to make it more fun, I'm picking colors like the center here, which is not yellow, and just really just playing around with the shapes, the colors, the sizing of my petals, and the way that I lay down my highlights. And now that I have those basic base layers down, I'm going to take a moment and go back to my filler space, add in some color blobs in the background that could be potentially, small flowers that are like little filler flowers, and work on my greenery as well. By doing this, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, it gives me the opportunity to let some of those colors dry for the flowers, but also gives me the opportunity to take a step back and look at my painting and ask myself, what does this need when it comes to my highlights and shadows? As well as you can see right now on the screen, I'm taking a moment to just splatter on some colors to add some pop. I'm a huge fan right now. Splatter is probably my favorite thing to do when it comes to my abstract acrylic paintings, is to just pop in some paint, because it kind of adds that extra little pizzazz that gives you the impression that there could be something in the background, or that adds extra texture and layerage. I'm a huge fan of it. I love it a lot. The only downside is sometimes accidentes happen. Like right now, a huge green blob fell on the painting, and it's because I accidentally actually hit the page. So when you have accidents like this, I'm sharing it with all of you guys versus editing it out, because when those accidents happen, you have the opportunity to try to paint over it, because acrylics are great for that, or you can just lean into it, grab a paintbrush, and really just add in extra of those details. I was lucky enough that at this time it's actually a green, so I can imply that what happened is a different type of green foliage. And now that those greens have been laid down and I've done some of my splatter, I'm going to go back to my focal point roses and start adding in some more highlights. My first couple of tries at it just weren't bright enough for me, so I went back and added some more white to it. So my highlights have a pink tone to it, because when you mix red and white, you get pink. And I just wanted them to be a little bit more popping. So that's basically what I'm doing now, is just adding in the top area of the petals where the sun would be hitting it, and creating different shapes and areas that it could be. If you find that you don't like a certain spot because of the way you held your paintbrush, just go back over it and move that paint around a little into a different direction. Because petals typically go swoop down towards the center, you might want to try doing that kind of direction with your paintbrush, as if you're painting towards the center of your flower. Right now, I am going back over some of my highlights because as I was painting them, I realized I brushed too far in, and now I'm just going to add another layer of color for the shadow area, because shadows have different variations. They have super dark, and then they start gradually getting lighter and lighter. So you can do the same thing with your flowers, but be more bold with your brush strokes as you put those different variations into your painting. And remember, when we're painting the flowers in the back, if you don't want it to be a focal point flower that really draws the eye in, you just want to be a little less detail oriented with it and leave it with larger paintbrushes, like paintbrush strokes. Oh, there we go. I got it out. Felt like that was just not going to come out of my mouth. At this stage, I'm going to also go back to my soft pink ones with the squiggly lines and add some more highlighting details. At this point, I'm going to actually get a smaller paintbrush to do it, just so that it can be seen on top of the other paint strokes to add depth into the brush movements and the layering of the colors. At this point, if you're feeling like your flowers are starting to really take shape and you like the way it's going, go back to your greenery, to your filler, to the background, and flush this part out to be almost complete, to the point where you're like, yes, this part is perfect. I love it so much. It'll help you notice if you're missing anything with your flowers, or if you want to add some extra layers for highlighting to really add some more white and pop. And as you're doing this, remember to have a good flow between, not a good flow, let me try to reword that, more like a good balance between light and dark. If you want this to be more like shadowed greenery and darker areas in, say, a bouquet of flowers, you want to also go in and get some really dark greens to lay in with your lighter and your medium mixes. Finding the balance between your lights and your highlighted greenery is all going to become something that is a personal preference aspect. Sometimes a painting, you're going to want to actually have a lot of bright highlighted greenery, and sometimes you're actually going to want to have a lot of dark ones. It's going to come down to what you like and what you want to have as a focal point. For me, now that I've seen how the greenery looks and how much I like it, I'm actually going in and I'm doing a sorry, my dog's barking. I'm going to go in and do some more highlights and add that extra little pop, like where it'd be the brightest point that the sun is reaching. Typically, those spots are the tips of your petals where the sun is going to reach it the most. And that's where I'm focusing my highlights on. This is all about being fun, light, loose, and just being free with your movements and the way you do it. Your highlight might not be a mixture of a really pale white, pinky color. Maybe your highlight's going to be painted in bright yellows or fluorescent pinks. It can be whatever you want it to be, because it's all about having fun. Typical rose centers aren't dark, they're yellows, and sort of even kind of an ochre yellowy orange. But I've done mine with a dark tone on the purplier side with a mixture of black. I wanted that to really offset what I'm doing with my roses. We are coming to the end of the video and the painting process. Now it's just about fine-tuning, highlights, maybe an extra pop of darkness or brightness, or maybe even a little bit of color here or there. So I want to just say to everyone watching this video, thank you so much. If you have any comments or even questions, hey, if you have a type of floral type that you're interested in knowing how to approach it in a more abstract, impressionistic way, leave that in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get back to you guys as soon as possible. I really hoped you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not already hit the subscribe button, but you are interested in learning and using art as a tool towards healing, learning more about different art supplies that you can use, and different types of approaches to creating things in a more impressionistic, abstract way, hit that subscribe button, because that's what I'm all about here. I'm about using art as a tool towards healing. Before I say goodbye, I want to share with you an affirmation for our breathing exercises that we're about to get to. And that affirmation is, I learn and grow with every experience. Remember that. Every painting that you do doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to learn from it. Same goes with life experiences and moments that we come across in our life. So let's focus on that as we take a deep breath in. And let's release any negativity as we breathe out. And let's do it one more time as we bring in a deep breath of positivity, focusing in on our affirmation. And release any negativity that we may be holding in. And let's shake out our limbs, guys, before we sign off. All right. Thank you again. And until next time, everyone, stay magical.